Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're uncovering Isaac Newton. Now, when you hear that name, you probably instantly picture a very serious, perfectly composed genius just sitting under an apple tree, single-handedly writing the rules of the universe. But today, we are going to look at these shockingly hidden sides of a man you only thought you knew. We're going way beyond this textbook myths to uncover a life that was actually filled with intense paranoia, devastating financial ruin, and a secret role dismantling a 17th century crime ring. Let's dive in. Newton once said, "I do not know what I may appear to the world, but to myself I seem to have been only like a boy playing on the seashore, whilst the great ocean of truth lay all undiscovered before me." It really paints a beautiful philosophical picture, doesn't it? It perfectly establishes this persona we all know, the humble, serene seeker of knowledge, just picking up smooth pebbles of wisdom on the beach of the cosmos. But hold on to that image, because we are about to completely shatter that illusion. Look, we're all taught the standard myth. You know the one. The flawless, untouchable mind who gave us the 3 laws of motion, revolutionized optics by proving white light is a spectrum with a prism, and literally gave us classical physics. But the reality is far messier and honestly infinitely more fascinating, because this man was also an obsessed alchemist, a deeply suspicious rival, and a spectacularly bad stock market investor. Section 1, The Boy and the Apple. Before we completely deconstruct his life, though, we do need to establish his undeniable genius. Tracing his early life, his beginnings were incredibly fragile. He was born prematurely with very low chances of survival, and tragically lost his father just months before his birth, so he was raised by his grandmother. Yet, his immense curiosity just pushed him forward. By age 18, he's at Cambridge University, absolutely dazzling his professors with his math skills. But then, the Great Plague hits, forcing the university to shut down. Newton has to retreat back to the countryside. And it was right there in that quiet, forced isolation that a famous piece of fruit changed human history forever. The legendary apple didn't just fall on his head, it sparked a monumental realization. Newton asked himself, why does the apple always fall straight down to the Earth's center? Why not sideways or upwards? And the crucial point is this. He realized that the exact same invisible force pulling that apple into the dirt is the very same force governing those massive celestial bodies floating out in space. It's brilliant. He unified the earthly and the cosmic into one simple law. Part 2, Science, Faith, and 2060. We're shifting gears dramatically here. Because while Newton was mapping out the physical universe, his mind was actually consumed by a deeply intense, much lesser-known theological obsession. Get this, Newton actually spent significantly more time studying the Bible than he did studying science. He firmly believed the Bible was the direct, inspired word of God, and he pored over it daily. For him, the intricate design of nature, like he pointed out the simple, functional mechanics of the human thumb, was absolute, undeniable proof of a divine creator. And this brilliantly illustrates the fascinating contrast in his worldview. He worked really hard to reconcile his science with his faith. Gravity perfectly explained how the planets moved in the solar system, sure, but it couldn't explain who put those planets into motion in the first place. Basically, whatever Newton could not explain with mathematics or physics, he attributed directly to God. And that brings us to the year 2060. Did you know Isaac Newton actually calculated the exact year the world would end? And he didn't do it using astronomy or physics. Based entirely on his intense mathematical analysis of biblical texts, Newton concluded that the apocalypse would arrive in the year 2060. It's just an incredible glimpse into how heavily his faith drove his analytical mind. Section 3, Paranoia and Petty Rivalries. Let's step away from his grand cosmic theories for a second and look at his deeply flawed, irrational human behaviors. Exploring his human flaws really brings him down to earth. His immense intellect came with some severe paranoia. He was highly introverted, deeply suspicious, and genuinely believed his closest friends were constantly conspiring behind his back. This stress actually contributed to him suffering 2 severe nervous breakdowns. He was also incredibly quarrelsome. He engaged in a bitter, years-long dispute with the German philosopher Leibniz over who exactly invented calculus first, straight up accusing Leibniz of stealing his work. Which brings us to one of the most famous quotes in scientific history. "If I have seen farther, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants." Today, we always present this quote as a beautifully humble tribute to the great predecessors whose work he built upon, right? Scientific giants like Copernicus, Galileo, Kepler. But here is the hidden truth. It wasn't a noble gesture at all. It's actually an amazing piece of historical irony. Newton wrote this in a letter to another scientist, Robert Hooke, and the two men absolutely despised each other. Now, Robert Hooke happened to be a very short man, so referring to standing on the shoulders of giants was actually a veiled, malicious, and incredibly petty jab at his rival's physical height. Number 4, the brilliant broke investor. We are now going to pivot to perhaps the lowest point of his life. We're going to explore how the man who completely mastered the laws of physics fundamentally failed at basic economics. So, in 1711, Newton bought shares in a British company promising massive trade profits from South America. This was the start of the infamous South Sea Bubble. By early 1720, market euphoria kicked in and prices absolutely skyrocketed. Newton actually made a great paper profit and sold. Good for him, right? But then, severe FOMO, the fear of missing out, took over. As prices hit their absolute peak in July 1720, he bought back in heavily. And when the bubble inevitably burst late that year, the devastating crash wiped out a massive portion of his personal fortune. Following that devastating loss, he uttered this brilliant quote, "I can calculate the motion of heavenly bodies, but not the madness of people." It perfectly emphasizes that even the greatest, most logical minds in human history are highly susceptible to emotional investing, market manias, and financial folly. We've all been there, Isaac. Section 5. Catching 17th century counterfeiters. Don't worry, Newton wasn't entirely defeated by money. His surprising final act was a story of financial redemption. At the time, Great Britain was facing a massive financial crisis. A staggering 10% of the currency in circulation was counterfeit. It was completely destabilizing the nation's economy, and the government desperately needed a genius to fix it. So they appoint him as warden of the Royal Mint, and Newton approached crime like a physics problem. First, he overhauled the physical designs of the coins. Second, he implemented complex, highly intricate engraving techniques that were nearly impossible for criminals to copy. And third, he actually created a comprehensive database of counterfeiters, acting as a real detective to successfully hunt down, capture, and imprison the criminals. He pretty much single-handedly stabilized the British economy. Section 6. The Great Ocean of Truth. As we transition to our conclusion, let's look back at his death in 1727 and the enduring, incredibly multi-dimensional legacy he left behind. When we look back at his foundational quotes, we are reminded of his profound impact. He defined our physical reality with concepts like what goes up must come down, and every action has an equal and opposite reaction. But he also offered deep wisdom, noting that our knowledge is just a drop in an ocean of the unknown, and reflecting on human nature. He said, "Tact is the art of making a point without making an enemy." Which is hilarious because that's something he arguably struggled with himself. And that leads us perfectly to this final, deeply poignant thought from Newton. People build too many walls and not enough bridges. It is a profound piece of wisdom, though laced with incredible irony, coming from a man who spent so much of his life highly isolated, battling rivals, and building walls around himself. Yet in the end, his genius recognized the fundamental human need for connection and bridges. So, having seen the man behind the math, the theologian, the petty rival, the broke investor, and the crime-fighting detective, I really want to hear from you. Which of Isaac Newton's many personas surprised you the most? And what is your favorite quote of his? Think about it and keep exploring the incredible, complex humanity behind our history's greatest geniuses.